Immigration court. What a mess it can be. We're going to help clarify the entire complex process in a very concise and easy to understand manner. Will you be a pro and know everything about immigration court by the end of this presentation? I highly doubt it, but at least you'll understand the basics of this extremely complex process. First off, what is immigration court? Immigration court is the short name for the Executive Office of Immigration Review. I prefer immigration court. Immigration court is a completely separate court system from the regular criminal justice system, federal, state, local court, etc. Who has to go through the immigration court process? Any individual who is in the United States without legal authorization. Could be someone that crossed the border or even someone who overstayed a visa, student or otherwise. One thing to point out, being in the U.S. illegally is not a crime. It's a breach of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which is administrative law. The purpose of immigration court is to determine whether or not a person in the United States may stay or has to go. An immigration judge who is appointed by the Department of Homeland Security makes all the decisions on a person's case. So, how does it all start? A person is sent a notice of immigration hearing, which explains the aspect of the Immigration and Nationality Act that he or she is in violation of. In addition, it tells the individual where to go, when, and what time for that very first important master hearing. It is really important that a person attends, because if they don't, they're going to be given what's called a final order of removal in absentia. That means that you have to go home, no questions asked. It's extremely important that you attend your master hearing. What happens at a master hearing? Well, think of it like Monday morning traffic court, or even an assembly line. There's a lot of people sitting in the back, and each person scheduled for a hearing is called to the bench one by one. The judge basically asks about a couple of things. Do you have legal representation? How would you like to proceed with your case? Then it's on to the next case, and someone else comes up. If time to find an attorney is needed, time will be given and another master hearing is scheduled. It's very rare that an immigration judge hands down a decision at a master hearing. Most of the time, however, the next court hearing is scheduled. This is called the individual hearing, where the meat of the entire process happens. Individual hearings are not public hearings. The only people present are the individual going through the process, their attorney, judges, and the EOIR attorney. Facts are presented, papers are passed, testimony is given. There can be a lot of individual hearings before the immigration judge decides on the outcome of a case. But why? Because, unlike criminal court, where a trial can go on and on and on until it's done, individual hearings are only allotted a specific block of time before it's time for the next hearing that's on the docket. So this process can take a really long time. We're talking years in some cases. No matter how many individual hearings it takes, the judge is going to make a decision which will really be one of two things. The person gets to stay or they have to go. If someone is told they get to stay, it's because they were granted some sort of benefit, like asylum or refugee status. We're not going to worry about those in this presentation because that would mean the process is over, which it's not. So what if a judge says, hey, you got to go? Well, it's going to be one of two scenarios, a final order of removal or voluntary departure. Final order of removal means that the person has to depart the United States in 30 days and is usually not allowed to re-enter the United States legally. That's no good. Voluntary departure has to be granted. Someone has to ask for it, and then the judge has to grant it. This is preferred by a lot of individuals facing removal because they get 120 days to leave, and in almost all cases can legally re-enter the United States. So let's say the immigration judge says, hey, you've got to go. Once the order is given, each person has 30 days to file an appeal with a group called the Board of Immigration Appeals, or what I like to simply refer to as the BIA. The Board of Immigration Appeals is the entity that reviews all of the applications, forms, appeals, paperwork, etc. This is not a physical court that people attend with an attorney. It's just paper court. I like to think about it like Knights of the Round Table, just sitting around with stacks of files and 2 stamps in their hands. Approved, denied. Their sole job is to decide whether or not to reopen the case and send it back to the immigration judge to be heard again, or agree with the decision and move on. Agree with the judge's decision, case closed. Disagree with the judge's decision, send it back to be heard again by an immigration, and the process starts all over again. When the BIA agrees with the judge, that's the end of the road inside of immigration court, but the person still has one more avenue left. An appeal can be filed with the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, or CCA. Now, the CCA has the same power as the BIA did, but remember, the federal court system is a completely different entity than immigration court. Think of it like this. Immigration court is mom. You don't want to go to grandma's house because it smells weird, but mom says you have to go. So you go ask dad, which in this case is the CCA, to see if you can stay here or not. Even though mom said you have to go, you're hoping dad will override the decision and let you stay home. When dad says you've got to go to grandma's house, well, that's the end of the road. So let's recap it here. It all starts with a person is found to be in the U.S. illegally. That person is served a notice to appear in front of an immigration judge for a master hearing. At the master hearing, the immigration judge is going to ask how the person wants to proceed with their case and schedule the next hearing, which is the individual hearing. After all individual hearings take place, the judge will make a decision on whether or not the person has to depart the U.S. or whether they can stay. If ordered to depart, you have 30 days to file an appeal with the BIA. If the BIA agrees with the judge, the person can then appeal one last time with the Circuit Court of Appeals of the United States. All right, now you've got the basics. Get ready for an exception to every rule that we just covered. The immigration court process is fun, right?